Sam had always been the picture of success. To the outside world, he was the embodiment of achievement, wealthy, respected, and with a life that many would envy. His sleek apartment, luxurious car, and high-profile job made him the epitome of what society defined as power. He had everything that was supposed to make him feel powerful. Yet deep inside, something was missing. He could feel it every time he lay awake at night staring at the ceiling, despite the accomplishments that others admired him for. There was a growing emptiness in his chest, a void that no amount of money, no number of promotions, no shiny accolades could fill. He had spent his whole life chasing the perfect definition of power, something he thought would bring him fulfillment. But it didn't. Every achievement seemed to bring him a momentary high, but it quickly faded, leaving him more confused than before. What was the point of all this? What was the real power behind all his success? As he sat in his sleek office, surrounded by awards and financial success, Sam asked himself a question that had been haunting him. Everyone wants power, but what? If the power you're chasing isn't the true kind? It felt like a cruel irony. He had worked tirelessly, given up countless hours, and sacrificed personal relationships, all for what? His success was celebrated by everyone around him, yet he could never shake the feeling that something deeper was missing. Was true power only about status, money, and recognition? Or was there more to it than this empty cycle of seeking more only to be left feeling less? Sam knew he had to find the answer. He was on a mission not to gain more success, but to uncover what real power truly meant. It was a search for something beyond wealth, beyond titles, beyond fleeting applause, something that would finally fill the emptiness and give him peace. In that moment, Sam realized that he wasn't just searching for power, he was searching for himself. Sam had always been driven. From the moment he set his eyes on his goals, there was no turning back. He worked tirelessly, sacrificing his personal life, his health, and even friendships to climb the corporate ladder. Every challenge he faced, he overcame with relentless determination. Nothing could stop him, not late nights at the office, not the stress, not the sacrifices he made along the way. And in the end, it all paid off. He had everything he'd ever dreamed of: a high-paying job, a beautiful home, expensive cars, and the admiration of everyone around him. People looked at Sam with envy, marveling at how he had it all. From the outside, he was living the dream, the ultimate picture of success. He had reached the pinnacle of his career, and yet, there was no joy. At first, Sam pushed the feeling away, brushing it off as a fleeting moment of doubt. But the feeling grew stronger every day, like an itch he couldn't scratch. He had it all. Why wasn't he happy? Why was he still restless, still searching for something that seemed out of reach? One evening, as he sat in his lavish apartment sipping a glass of wine, Sam looked around at the material wealth he had accumulated. It was all he had ever wanted. Yet in that moment he felt a profound emptiness. The shiny surfaces, the expensive furniture, the trophies, none of it seemed to matter. They didn't fill the space inside him. The recognition, the admiration from colleagues, even the applause from his peers, it all felt hollow. Sam's mind began to race. Was this what success was all about? Was this the power he had been chasing all his life? It didn't feel like power. It felt like an illusion. Something that had looked so shiny and perfect from the outside now seemed fleeting, like a mirage disappearing when you got too close. His heart started to ache with an unfamiliar longing, a desire for something deeper, something real. He felt as if he had spent years chasing the wrong thing, pouring everything into a life that didn't bring him the fulfillment he had imagined. Could it be that success, as the world defined it, wasn't true power at all? The questions lingered, hanging in the air like an unanswered prayer. Sam realized that he was caught in the illusion of success. What he had worked so hard for was not the power he had sought. There had to be something more, something that went beyond the superficial measures of success. The battle within him had begun. Would he continue to chase this elusive dream, or would he dare to question everything he had worked for? Just as Sam began to settle into his life, a sudden storm hit, one that he never saw coming. His dream project, the one he had poured his heart and soul into, was abruptly rejected by his bosses. The months of late nights, the countless hours of hard work, the sacrifices, nothing seemed to matter anymore. The rejection was sharp, brutal, and swift. Worse still, the whispers started. Colleagues who had once admired him now murmured behind his back, casting doubt on his abilities and questioning his competence. His reputation, built over years of hard work, seemed to crumble before his eyes. In that moment, Sam felt the ground beneath him shift. For the first time, everything he had worked for, his status, his success, his carefully curated life, felt fragile. He had been so sure of himself, so convinced that he was on the right path, that this failure felt like a betrayal. The confidence he had built from years of achievement shattered like glass hitting the floor, leaving jagged edges of doubt. Despair washed over him like a heavy wave, drowning out the sense of control he had once clung to. He had spent years defining himself by his career, his wealth, and his successes. But now none of it seemed to matter. Without the dream project, without the accolades, who was he really? Was he simply the sum of his achievements? Or was there something deeper within him that he had yet to uncover? Frustration bubbled inside him. How could he have been so wrong? He had believed that success and power were synonymous, that the more he accomplished, the more he would feel fulfilled. But this failure tore that belief apart. What was the point of all the effort, all the sacrifices, if it could be undone in an instant? Sam began to spiral. His mind became a battleground. He questioned his abilities, his worth, his future. Was he really cut out for this? Was he capable of doing anything meaningful? The emptiness he had once felt now expanded, threatening to consume him entirely. In his darkest moments, he began to wonder if he had been chasing the wrong things all along. The pain of failure wasn't just external. It hit him at his core, making him doubt everything about himself. The recognition he had so fiercely sought now seemed trivial in comparison to the deeper void he felt inside. If this was success, if this was power, then it didn't feel like anything worth having at all. In this moment of crisis, Sam realized something powerful. He had been living in an illusion. The world had told him that success was the ultimate form of power, but his failure shattered that illusion. What he thought was power was nothing more than a fragile house of cards. And now he had to rebuild, not just his career, but his sense of self. In the midst of his despair, Sam stumbled upon an unexpected encounter. It was during one of his quiet walks to clear his mind when he met Maya. She was an older woman with silver hair pulled back in a simple braid, her weathered face telling stories of a life well lived, but full of hardships. Sam first noticed her sitting on a park bench, gazing out at the horizon with a serene calmness, as though she had seen and weathered the storm of life countless times. Out of curiosity, Sam approached her. He had no specific reason, just a need to talk, to unburden himself to someone who might understand. What followed was a conversation that would change everything. Maya listened intently as Sam poured out his frustrations, the failures, the doubts, and the deep sense of loss he felt. When he finally stopped, almost breathless, Maya sat silently for a moment, letting the weight of his words settle. Then, with a steady, knowing gaze, she spoke. "True power isn't in what you can achieve," Maya said, her voice calm but firm. "It's in how you rise after falling." Her words hit Sam like a lightning bolt, and for the first time in what felt like forever, a flicker of understanding sparked within him. Maya's life had not been one of smooth success. It had been marked by struggle, loss, and countless setbacks. Yet there she sat, calm, unbroken, radiating a quiet strength that Sam could not ignore. Maya continued, "You see, the world tells us that success is power. But success is fleeting. Achievements come and go. It's the way you stand up after you've been knocked down that reveals your true strength. Power is about resilience, patience, and faith. not just external achievements. Sam was taken aback. He had never thought about power in this way before. All his life, he had been taught that power came from conquering obstacles and earning accolades from accumulating wealth and status. But Maya's words challenged everything he had believed. She wasn't talking about avoiding failure. She was talking about embracing it, learning from it, and using it as fuel to rise again. As Maya spoke, Sam felt a shift within himself. The weight of his failures, which had once seemed like burdens, now began to feel like lessons. Perhaps this failure wasn't a sign that he was weak, but a sign that he had the opportunity to rebuild himself in a way that was far more meaningful than any external success could offer. Maya's words echoed in his mind long after their conversation ended. He realized that his quest for power had been misguided. The true measure of power wasn't how high you could climb, but how gracefully you could rise each time you fell. This encounter marked the beginning of Sam's transformation. His perspective was slowly starting to shift. He was no longer looking for power in the applause of others or the size of his paycheck. Instead, he began to search for power in the quiet moments of perseverance, in the strength it took to keep moving forward despite the setbacks, and in the unwavering belief that there was more to life than just winning. After his conversation with Maya, Sam's mind was racing. For the first time in a long while, he felt something stir inside him. An inkling of hope, a whisper that maybe, just maybe, there was a way forward that didn't require him to constantly chase success. But Maya's final words left him with a lingering question. What is faith? He wasn't sure where to begin, but Maya saw the confusion in his eyes and gently guided him toward a deeper understanding. Faith, she said, isn't just about believing in a higher power. It's about trusting in something greater than your failures or successes. It's about believing that no matter how lost you feel, there's a reason for the journey. Sam had never thought of faith in that way before. He had always associated it with religion, with rules, and with an unshakable belief in something divine. But Maya wasn't speaking about that. She was speaking about faith in life itself, the trust that setbacks were simply part of the journey, that obstacles were not signs of defeat, but opportunities for growth. Despite her words, Sam couldn't help but wrestle with his disbelief. He was used to finding answers through logic and action. Faith, in this sense, felt like surrender. How could he trust in something he couldn't see or control? He had spent so much of his life focused on results that the idea of surrendering to the unknown seemed like a weakness. But Maya, sensing his internal struggle, reassured him. Faith is not the absence of doubt, she explained. It's the willingness to keep going despite it. It's about trusting that every step you take is leading you somewhere, even if you can't see the destination yet. Sam spent the next few weeks reflecting on her words. He looked at his failures not as marks of his inadequacy, but as pieces of a puzzle he was still trying to solve. Slowly, he began to understand that true power didn't come from having all the answers or controlling every aspect of his life. It came from surrendering to the process, trusting in time, and believing that everything, even the setbacks, was happening for a reason. One evening, as Sam sat in his apartment, reflecting on the journey that had brought him here, he had an epiphany. He realized that up until this point he had always been searching for external validation, whether through promotions, wealth, or social recognition. But now he was beginning to understand that the true power was found in the quiet moments of faith. Faith in the process, faith that each step, no matter how painful, was moving him forward. It wasn't about immediate success anymore. It was about trusting in the bigger picture, believing that the time would come when everything would make sense. His journey, with all its ups and downs, had purpose, and that in itself was powerful. As he closed his eyes that night, Sam felt a sense of peace that had eluded him for so long. He didn't have all the answers, and that was okay. For the first time in years, he felt ready to embrace whatever came next, with the understanding that the true power in life was found not in the destination, but in the faith he placed in the journey itself. Just when Sam thought he had a handle on things, life threw another curveball his way. This time, it wasn't a sudden failure or a lost opportunity. It was something more subtle, yet far more frustrating. Waiting. Sam had always been someone who prided himself on speed, getting things done quickly, crossing tasks off his list, and moving on to the next challenge. He thrived on momentum. But now he found himself in a situation that tested his patience to the limit. A project that he had poured months of effort into was stuck in limbo. There was no clear end in sight, no fast solution. It felt as though everything was at a standstill. The project had potential, but the timeline was dragging on and Sam was growing increasingly restless. The initial excitement had worn off, replaced by a gnawing sense of frustration. He was used to achieving things in short bursts of energy. This slow, drawn-out process was starting to feel like a test of endurance rather than skill. As the days dragged on, he started to question whether it was all worth it. Was success really just about patience? Was the power to endure more valuable than the power to act? There were days when Sam was tempted to give up, to move on to something quicker, something that offered instant results. But he remembered Maya's words about resilience and faith. He began to shift his mindset. Instead of seeing this waiting period as a setback, he tried to view it as an opportunity to develop something he hadn't fully understood before: patience. Patience wasn't about doing nothing. It was about choosing to keep moving forward, even when progress felt slow. Sam began to embrace the process, focusing on steady, incremental improvements. Each day he worked on refining his skills, taking small steps forward, trusting that progress would eventually come. It wasn't always easy. There were moments of doubt, times when the silence felt overwhelming. But Sam learned to use these moments to build a deeper kind of strength. He realized that patience wasn't passive. It wasn't about sitting idly by, waiting for things to fall into place. It was an active choice, a decision to trust in the process, to keep working even when the results weren't immediate, and to have faith that the work being done now would pay off in the future. Patience became an essential part of his journey, not just as a virtue, but as a form of power. As the weeks passed, Sam began to notice subtle changes within himself. The frustration that had once ruled his mind began to dissipate, replaced by a quiet confidence. He could see that the waiting had transformed him. He wasn't just waiting for the project to be finished, he was growing along with it. With each delay, he became more focused, more determined, and more patient. In a way, the very act of waiting had given him more strength than all the instant successes he had chased before. Patience was teaching him to trust the timing of life, to understand that some things take time, and that true power lies not in rushing to the finish line but in having the courage to endure until you reach it. In the end, Sam didn't just complete the project. He came to realize that the real success was in the transformation that occurred while he was waiting. He had learned that the most powerful people weren't always the fastest or the most immediate in their success, but those who could trust the journey, endure the challenges, and keep moving forward with quiet patience. As Sam continued his journey, he began to look back at his past, not with regret, but with a new perspective. His earlier failures, which once felt like painful mistakes, now appeared to him as vital moments of growth. He thought about the business ventures that didn't take off, the relationships that fell apart, and the dreams that seemed unreachable at the time. But instead of dwelling on the negative aspects, Sam started to see how each failure had shaped him into who he was today. In the past, Sam had been afraid of failure. It was something to avoid at all costs. He had always seen success as the ultimate marker of power. But now, after everything he had been through, he understood that success didn't come without its fair share of missteps and setbacks. Each failure, Sam realized, had taught him something invaluable. Whether it was the strength to keep going, the wisdom to learn from his mistakes, or the resilience to stand back up after falling. He revisited the failures he had once considered devastating. His first failed startup had been a crushing blow to his ego, but it also taught him the importance of perseverance. The failed relationship had been painful, but it revealed the significance of emotional intelligence and understanding. Even the rejection of his dream project had forced him to confront his fears and insecurities, teaching him to embrace vulnerability. As he reflected, Sam realized that each failure wasn't just a failure. It was a lesson in disguise. It was easy to see failures as signs of weakness, something that needed to be avoided at all costs. But now, Sam saw them differently. Failures were stepping stones, markers of progress that had been critical in his growth. They had pushed him to develop skills, adapt to challenges, and redefine his goals. Without those failures, Sam would not be the person he was today. Sam's mindset began to shift. No longer did he fear failure, instead he embraced it as an essential part of his journey. He realized that failure wasn't the end. It was simply another beginning. It was an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to become stronger. Each time he stumbled, he gained more wisdom and resilience. His failures had become fuel for his transformation. They no longer felt like obstacles, but like invitations to keep moving forward. Through this shift in perspective, Sam found a deep, unshakable strength in embracing failure. He understood that true power wasn't about avoiding mistakes or setbacks. It was about using them as a foundation for growth. Every time he faced a failure, he grew stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Instead of letting his failures define him, Sam chose to define himself by how he responded to them. As Sam continued down this path, he found empowerment in the very thing he had once feared. Each failure was no longer something to run from. It was something to stand tall in the face of, to learn from, and to use as fuel for his future success. He realized that the most powerful individuals weren't the ones who avoided failure, but those who could stand up, dust themselves off, and keep moving forward, knowing that each step forward was a victory in itself. Sam's new understanding of failure gave him a profound sense of empowerment. He had finally unlocked the truth that real power doesn't come from avoiding failure, but from embracing it and turning it into a tool for growth. After months of struggle, introspection, and gradual change, Sam found himself standing at a crossroads. He had faced countless challenges, endured numerous setbacks, and transformed the way he viewed success and failure. But there was still something missing, something he couldn't quite put his finger on. It was as though there was a final piece to the puzzle, a deeper truth he needed to uncover to fully understand what true power was. One quiet evening, as he sat on the balcony of his apartment, watching the sunset, Sam had an aha moment. The clarity washed over him, almost like a wave. He realized that all along he had been searching for power in the wrong places. Power wasn't about accumulating success or wealth. It wasn't about being invincible or perfect. True power was something much deeper. Power is not the absence of fear, it's the courage to face it and keep moving forward. The words rang in his mind like a truth he had always known but never fully understood until now. Sam realized that the strongest people weren't those who never experienced fear, doubt, or vulnerability. Instead, they were the ones who acknowledged these emotions, accepted their imperfections, and faced them head-on. They had the courage to move forward, despite the fears that tried to hold them back. This revelation was life-changing. Sam understood now that true power wasn't about building a facade of invincibility or being flawless. It was about accepting yourself, imperfections, vulnerabilities, and all, and still having the strength to keep going. He had spent so much time chasing the illusion of perfection, believing that power came from being untouchable. But in reality, it was in embracing his flaws and weaknesses that he had found the most profound source of strength. The emotional weight of this realization hit Sam deeply. He had spent years striving for an idealized version of himself, always pushing himself to be better, to do more, to be flawless. But now he understood that this pursuit had been draining him. In trying to appear invulnerable, he had neglected the very qualities that made him human: his fears, his doubts, his imperfections. These were not signs of weakness. They were part of his story, and they made him stronger. Sam's approach to life began to shift dramatically. He no longer felt the pressure to be perfect or to hide his vulnerabilities. Instead, he embraced the messy, complicated journey of life. He allowed himself to be honest about his fears, his mistakes, and his struggles. By doing so, he found an incredible sense of freedom. He no longer had to pretend to be something he wasn't. His power, Sam realized, came from his ability to be real and raw, to face his challenges with courage and vulnerability. This bold insight became the cornerstone of Sam's transformation. He stopped chasing perfection and instead started embracing the process, the ups and downs, the successes and failures, the moments of strength and weakness. He realized that each of these moments contributed to his growth and development. And most importantly, he understood that his true power was in his ability to be authentic, to be honest with himself, and to continue moving forward, no matter what obstacles lay ahead. The courage to face his fears, to acknowledge his flaws, and to grow through challenges became Sam's definition of power. It wasn't about being invincible. It was about the strength to rise after falling, the vulnerability to be open, and the perseverance to keep going when things got tough. This new understanding of power would guide Sam for the rest of his life. The day came when Sam faced his greatest challenge. It was a culmination of everything he had worked for, a test of everything he had learned about power, patience, and faith. The stakes were higher than ever, and this time, failure could mean losing everything: the career he had built, the relationships he had nurtured, and even the personal growth he had strived for. The weight of it all felt crushing. The challenge arrived in the form of an opportunity, a project that could launch Sam into the next level of success, a chance to prove himself once and for all. It was everything he had dreamed of. However, as the days passed, complications arose and each solution seemed to create new problems. His team was falling apart, deadlines were missed, and the pressure from his clients was mounting. The sense of control Sam had once felt was slipping away and doubt crept in. For the first time in months, Sam felt the old panic surge within him. The temptation to react, to fight back against the mounting pressure, was strong. He could feel his fists clenching, his heart racing, and frustration bubbling up. He could almost taste the anger, the sense of injustice. This could be the moment where he lost everything, or so he thought. But then, in the middle of the chaos, a quiet thought echoed in his mind. What if I handled this differently? He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of Maya's words echo in his mind. True power isn't about control. It's about how you rise, how you handle the storm. Sam realized that this moment, this test, wasn't about winning or losing. It wasn't about coming out on top. It was about proving to himself that he could face the most difficult circumstances with grace and patience. Instead of lashing out, instead of giving in to his frustration, Sam chose to trust himself. He focused on his faith in the process, in the belief that whatever happened, he could handle it. His approach wasn't driven by anger or the need to control the outcome. He let go of the desire for perfection and allowed the situation to unfold naturally. He wasn't fighting the challenge anymore. He was accepting it, working through it step by step, calmly and deliberately. The moment of truth came when Sam made a decision to step away from the chaos, even when it felt impossible to do so. Instead of rushing to fix everything, he took a moment to collect himself. He reminded himself that this was part of the process, part of his growth. This moment wasn't the end of his journey. It was simply a part of it. And by staying true to his newfound understanding of power, he chose to handle it with poise and patience. The result was not what Sam expected, nor was it what he had hoped for. The project wasn't a massive success. The opportunity didn't turn out exactly as planned. However, something much more important happened. Sam found a sense of peace, something he had long been seeking. The storm of emotions, the pressure, the doubts, they all melted away as he embraced his ability to stay calm, to rise above the chaos. What Sam gained was far more valuable than any external success: inner peace. He felt confident in himself, not because of what he had achieved, but because of how he had handled the situation. He had faced his greatest test with dignity and patience, and in doing so, he had discovered a strength that went beyond external accomplishments. It wasn't about winning or losing. It was about the inner power to face life's challenges with grace, to trust the process, and to remain true to his beliefs, no matter what. Sam had learned that true power doesn't come from avoiding the storm, it comes from how you weather it. And in that moment, Sam knew he had passed the greatest test of all. As Sam stood on the balcony overlooking the city, the lights shimmering below, he couldn't help but reflect on his journey. The years of chasing success, of pushing himself harder than he ever thought possible, seemed distant now, almost like a different lifetime. The flashy cars, the recognition, the fleeting applause of achievements, they no longer held the weight they once did. The external markers of success that had once driven him so relentlessly now seemed so small in comparison to the internal transformation he had gone through. Sam had arrived at a place where the pursuit of fame, money, and status no longer held the same allure. What truly mattered to him now was the strength he had cultivated in his heart, the resilience he had built from the countless struggles he had faced, and the faith that had sustained him through every storm. The battles, the disappointments, the failures, these were no longer burdens. They were the very foundation upon which Sam had grown into the person he was today. He thought about Maya's words, the first spark of insight that had changed everything. For him, true power isn't in what you can achieve, it's in how you rise after falling. He had spent so many years chasing the wrong kind of power, the kind that looked good on the outside but left him hollow on the inside. Now he knew the truth. The real power lay in how you handle life's inevitable setbacks, in your ability to remain steadfast when things fall apart, in your faith to keep moving forward even when you can't see the path ahead. It wasn't about being invincible or about overcoming every obstacle without fail. It was about embracing the inevitable falls, learning from them, and finding the strength to get back up. True power, Sam realized, wasn't something you were born with or something that could be purchased. It wasn't about external accomplishments. It was about who you became through the process of overcoming adversity. The power Sam had been searching for had always been within him. It wasn't in the flashy cars or the high-paying job. It was in the quiet moments of introspection, the slow and steady building of resilience, the deep trust in the journey even when it seemed uncertain. He now understood that real strength wasn't about being perfect or invulnerable. It was about being vulnerable, being authentic, and having the courage to continue, despite the odds. As he stood there, Sam felt a sense of peace wash over him. A peace that was not tied to any achievement or possession. It was a peace born from knowing that true power is not something you chase, but something you develop over time. It is forged in the fires of struggle, tempered by patience, and strengthened by faith. And so, Sam had learned the most valuable lesson of all. True power is not in what you can achieve. It's in who you become through the struggles you face. This was the true power. It wasn't something you possessed. It was something you earned through perseverance, patience, faith, and the willingness to rise after every fall.